First of all, thanks for everybody that has joined us here live. This is our second Transitions Talk live edition, and couldn't be even more excited to have a great guest to join us today, Mr. Link Kabadyundi. And we're going to talk a little bit further about this, but for those who are not aware of what Transition Talks is, it is our series of interviews to really give an opportunity to shed light on transition stories from former elite athletes and what they have learned throughout the process. I'm honored to be able to host these interviews and talk with a number of great individuals and learn about their stories as a former football player myself, but also, supporter and a coach here with Athlete Soul. So these series interviews are great insights, and there are always some cool nuggets that get pulled out of that. So with that, I'm going to say today we're talking to Link here. He's a former D1 basketball player, turned multi-hyphenated professional focused on creating impact through communication, sports, community building, art, and technology. Now, Link has had a interesting journey with basketball and has experienced a lot of transitions. He's also been many places and brings a global perspective to the conversation around what it looks like when athletes lean into all of who they are. During this conversation, we're going to dive a little bit deeper on his journey as an athlete and where he is today. And we'll leave some time for some questions at the end. So, yeah, let's just have some fun with this. So, as I was kind of saying, leading into this, Link and I met at a conference, and as we are both leaving, we had a very short conversation, and he told me a little bit about himself and his story, and I shared a little bit about me, and I was like, you sound like an interesting person that we can bring on to Transition Talks, and he was like, yeah, let's do it. So, Link, thank you for joining us, man. How you doing today?
Absolutely, I'm good. Good. I'm grateful to be here. Appreciating the energy and the call already. So I'm good.
Okay, well, let's get to it then, man. I appreciate you being here. Let's start at the beginning. We know, well, at least I know, I understand you're born in Kinshasa, Congo, and you were raised in Montreal, Canada. But when did basketball become like the thing for you as part of your journey? And like as you were growing up, I know you have a big family, but like what were some of the goals that you had as a kid going into this sport?
Um, yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I want to say at the very beginning, basketball has always been a part of my family. Um, my dad back in the day has played for the national Congolese team and has grown up alongside Dikembe Mutombo and others. So, basketball has kind of been like a part of the DNA, at least from my dad's side. Interestingly enough, for me growing up, basketball was not my first love. There are other things that I enjoyed doing. But obviously, growing up to be all the way to 7-1 as I am now, it was pretty evident that, I had pretty good opportunities in the sport. So I want to say at first, I was strongly encouraged to take part in basketball. And then eventually, like I just learn to enjoy it, love it. And from I want to say I I started playing like organized basketball fairly later than most. Um, but I learned so much through that journey and through family. I learned how to, work hard. And it sounds, easy and simple, but sometimes you have to really go through the fire to learn, like, what your limits are. So I had good mentorship and guidance there. And yeah, leading to the person I am today, I think basketball as a foundation has been super, super crucial. just because, all of the values that we all know and learn through sports, how to work as a team, um, how to when you go through divisional basketball or even other level, like just waking up early and making sure you're on time and all these things and managing multiple priorities as a student athlete. So all of these things and the diligence, the discipline, and doing everything that's been super, super crucial. But basketball was not my first love, so it's been an interesting journey.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Basketball just kind of something that you got into. Obviously, becoming 7 foot, people are probably telling you like, "Hey, you should probably play basketball, right?" And
They
you
still
you
do.
got the advantage of learning more of the life skills. It sounds like, and being in that environment that really helped push you. But I'm curious too. What was your first love?
So the first one was singing. So I feel like now for people who don't know me that well, they're like, oh my gosh, like that's a hidden talent. But I've sang or sung the national anthem of Canada where I'm from at professional basketball game before like 3 years ago. So I've recorded and publish songs on streaming platforms and things like that. So that was my first love. But right now, that's not something I'm looking to pursue anymore, as I have so many different avenues for different
Okay.
ventures. And then, photography, which I know we'll talk about a little bit later on, has also grown a lot as far as like something I love doing. And I think with basketball, the way I talk about it not being my first love, like, growing and going through the sport, developing relationships, I've just really learned to love basketball. And I think, in the world of athletes, once you do more than your sport, people think you don't love your sport. So then I've had to like battle against people thinking I don't love basketball when I actually do. So interesting journey. But yeah, R&B singing.
Okay, okay. Well, got some smooth vocals I see. That's really cool. And like the fact that you realized that early, that there are other things that you cared about, even though you're on that journey and getting to the next level, because you did go play in college. And obviously the cliche is that you have to put 110% in focus in your sport to even make it to that type of level of play. But you did. You made it to TCU. You eventually transferred to a JUCO and then landed at UT Arlington. Just thinking about your collegiate experience playing basketball, what were some of the highlights? What were some of the things that you really hang your hat on?
Um, I want to say as far as the student athlete experience, obviously just getting the opportunity to play, basketball at the highest level in college, that was a highlight. For me, I was the first of my siblings to do so. So, an opportunity to set the example. And, we were a big family, 7 siblings. So a lot of them followed. Um, and I want to say just realizing that once sometimes when you think you've hit your limit, like there's so much more that you could do. Like playing basketball at that level has taught me that. Also the traveling. I'm a Canadian that has been to more states than the average American. So that's been a super fun experience to, go from coast to coast and everything in between. And I want to say just the opportunity to build relationships. Literally next week, I'm about to be in Atlanta and reconnecting with my former head coach from UT Arlington, who's now at Georgia Tech. So just keeping those relationships alive. staying in touch with teammates, even professors on the academic side. That has been key for my journey. So yeah, I think about all of these things. And people ask me, do you miss playing basketball? Oftentimes I don't, because I feel like I've done my duty. My knees feel it. But in addition to that, like I'm staying close to sports through other avenues. And I'll say the few times where I miss playing basketball is when I see a really nice play where the team is like moving the ball and it's like a lot of great teamwork. And I'm like, ooh, that was nice. That makes me want to play.
Yeah, yeah. Seeing the togetherness in on the court and bringing that, it's like that locker room feeling and being a part of a brotherhood is something that probably sticks. It sticks with every athlete as far as that environment. Um, you talked about this a little bit, but like talking about the first love and other opportunities and things that you're interested in. You actually started doing photography when you were at UT Arlington, and they allowed you to like take some photos with the team, and then you start doing photos outside. Like, why was it important for you at a pivotal point in your career as an athlete to try on other things and explore other sides of you?
Um, I think that's always been in me. Um, and at UTA, I started doing photography with like, professional camera equipment and things of that nature. But I've loved photography long before. I don't know if people here probably do remember like you know, even back with the flip phones, like I used to with my LG phone and stuff. I used to try and take pictures with that, my Nokia phones. Um, so, it started there and then it just evolved into me being able to, you know, practice my creativity, and link it to sports, right? Just the natural merging of all of my worlds. I saw a great opportunity there. So yeah, and I think the other piece is just being able to like leverage opportunities that won't always be there. And sometimes like some people are lucky to create, or not lucky, they work hard to create opportunities where they're able to, for example, like stay connected to NCAA, be credentialed and things of that nature. But for me being a player, I'm like, man, I'm at the school, I could literally just ask and they're most likely to say yes. So I was like, let's do it. So yeah, I remember we were on like a tournament. Think in New Orleans or something, and the women's team traveled with us. And I was like, man, when we're not playing and they're playing, like the team was basically just watching in the stands. And I'm like, let me go out there and bring my camera. And I was on Google, like how to take sports photography with a, Nikon camera and stuff, and just trying things. And it's been good. I think that it's led me to a space where, I eventually um, was able to take photos like for other uh, games, other teams, especially when I finished playing. So when I finished playing, I still had a year to complete my master's. So I was still at UTA. And as a graduate assistant, like I got to travel and cover the men and the women's. After that, I got a chance to cover like WNBA. When I lived in Atlanta for a little bit, I got a chance to cover the NBA Summer League a few years after. So it's been a great journey with photography.
Wow. So what led from you asking to go out and take photos, it expanded to creating something and a new pathway in your life where you've been able to explore and take photos in a lot of great places. And it was just more so like having the courage to say, hey, I got this camera. Can I just take some photos of the other team while we're not playing? And like, sure, right? That's pretty cool. I think a lot of people can hear that message and be like, "Oh, all he did was ask, and they said, yeah." Like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I think it's like, giving yourself the chance to ask when the stakes are low and you could just practice. Um, so that you prepare yourself for the bigger opportunities. I think that's key.
Yeah, no, that's real. Well, I also know, this led to different pathways eventually for you in media, and then you created a documentary about yourself called 20 something. And watching that documentary was very insightful. But one thing that I want to talk about is, you've been through a lot of pivots, a lot of stress, and a lot of different things in your life as well. Losing your mom to cancer at age 18, going through the multiple injuries, becoming more of the supportive caregiver for the seven siblings that you have. What was the dynamic for you like in college while you're navigating all these different things, balancing out the demands of being an athlete and like mentally, like how were you able to weigh all of this while continuing to move forward?
Yeah. Ooh, loaded question. Um, I think if we focus on how that was for me in college, it was hard. Um, I think, you know, I lost my mom before going to college. But obviously that's something that you just feel like throughout the years. Although something I could say is that my siblings, we're a very like close-knit group. So that's definitely key for just, the support system and making sure that we're good moving forward. Um, but then in college, some of the dynamics that I was navigating was taking care of, or ensuring that the younger siblings and younger cousins were also like doing well at the time. A bunch of them were going to school in Texas, not too far from UT Arlington. So, every now and then I would go and check on them and, make sure they have what they need. But just balancing all of that with the demands of being, a full-time graduate student, or playing, and being a graduate assistant for athletics and for the Department of Communication, just having all these jobs. Um, you know, it would be hard at times, mentally. You know, I think the my main mindset is always like excellence and don't want to drop the ball at any point. But something that I actually heard at the conference that you and I met at was, sometimes it was like I think a rubber ball analogy and a glass ball. So make sure that, if you drop a ball, it's a rubber ball. Like it can bounce back, right? You got other opportunities to um, make sure you can like catch back up with the opportunity or that task or whatever. But if it's a glass ball, that's something that, it breaks. You won't have an opportunity to do that again. And that's something that definitely could have helped me back in the day. um, but yeah, some of the things that I did was really just stay close to family, communicate with them, and then apart from that, I mean, being playing the sport is always like a good outlet and a way to cope. But also just the other avenues, like my other passions, being able to um, exercise those. Like when I was a graduate assistant, I got a chance to do like photography for the different athletic teams at the school. And it's just something I enjoy, right? So trying to create opportunities that I actually like so that I don't feel like the additional responsibilities are too much of a weight, was also a way that I could balance all of the things and how they how I perceive them to weigh on me mentally.
Yeah, no, that's big. I mean, it sounds like with all the things that were weighing on you and the pressure to, seemingly be perfect, sometimes it felt like you decided to like, I got to do things that will recharge me and, resonate with me to keep me going through this process. And I mean, you were navigating a lot, and being able to carry that for your family and In the documentary, it sounds like you were driving to go pick up your brothers to bring them back and forth, and really just, on the surface, being there for others, but still trying to find the ways to tap into you, which is important through that process because many of us will carry that burden with us and not really give ourselves a sense of recharging. Um, let's talk about it now. Like, obviously, basketball was part of your journey. I'm curious if basketball was something that you hope to take to the pro level, because I know in your transition story, you went from UT Arlington, um, and not a surprise, but a surprise to me because I ended up in the same place. You ended up being in Atlanta, and I don't know what led you to get to Atlanta. But that was a place where I had to find myself, kind of coincidentally. So, like hearing this as part of your journey, I'm curious as to what led up to the transition. How did you get from where you were to there? And while you were in Atlanta trying to discover yourself, what were some of the things you were going through?
Um, Man, Atlanta, it was a blessing, but also a tough time. Some of the toughest time. And I want to say what led me to there was, just feeling like I needed a change from Texas, but still wanting to find opportunities in the US. I have a lot of friends and we share a similar experience where, being Canadians and wanting to work in sports, like the opportunities are so limited up north. And you do everything you can to just find a fitting opportunity in the States and continue to evolve there. So, there was a little bit of that, but also I was at a time where, you know, s- s- like a lot of dynamics pushed me to, wanting to take a break from Texas and find a new space to be at. And looking at options, I was like, Atlanta seems like a city that's not too expensive, where, I should be able to like, find an opportunity and evolve and things of that nature. So that's what led me there. Now, as I mentioned in my documentary, arriving in the city was not smooth. And part of being young too, just getting scammed on housing and starting my journey, living in my car. That was definitely some of the most interesting times of my life so far. But and navigating that, everything was, a learning journey for me, and processing like some of those days. I still had that drive to be excellent, to reach my goals. But some days you're just sitting in the car and punching the wheel. And you're just like, where do we go from here? Like, how did I even get here? And I could return to Canada if I wanted to, but I'm like, man, I just have this vision of doing grand things, and that would feel like surrendering to me. So I kept pushing, kept, creating opportunities for myself, took photography to the next level, and, was able to do like some really awesome things like, taking pictures of the CEO and chairman of JP Morgan, Chase, and partnering with like Renee Montgomery, who was just like finishing her playing career at the Atlanta Dream, and now she's an executive there. Um, and yeah, it was like right around 2020, and I saw Renee was doing planning an initiative to you know, feed and provide beverages to folks who are like marching in the streets for George Floyd. And I was like, hey, I want to, take part in what you're doing, and, help with the food part. I could cook a little bit. So, I reached out and she was like, yeah, let's do it. And we partnered up and I was able to, once everything was ready, do some photography at the event. And that just showed me like no matter where I am, I can make something happen. And it just takes for you to not give up and reimagine opportunities sometimes. And yeah, that's been key to my journey. But Atlanta taught me so many things. And I moved there in 2019. And I always, when I need to, recenter myself in gratitude, 2019 is a landmark year where I'm like, man, in 2019 when I wanted to get opportunities and things like that. Or, sometimes when you're at your job and you're like, man, I'm so tired of this job. Or you're building something, you're like, man, I'm so tired. Why am I doing all this? I just take myself back to 2019 when I wish I even had a home. So I'm like, to be in this position now, I I can only be grateful.
Yeah. No, that's perspective, man. It's like being able to reflect on where you were at the lowest point and being able to navigate that. And what I'm hearing from you is that you planted this seed of exploration in your life that became a skill set in photography. And that skill helped you get out of a period of transition that was really tough. It allowed you to jump into entrepreneurship probably way sooner than you expected, but it opened doors where you're taking photographs at some major places, and that kind of got you started. So as you started getting more involved in photography, what led you to kind of evolve that into eventually launching your own media company? I know eventually you left Atlanta. What were some of the decisions that kind of weighed in with that?
Yeah, you know, I think something I tell myself, and you introduced me as a multi-hyphenate. I use one gift to open a door for the other. And that's something that I was able to do, in my time in Atlanta, just being like, hey, this is the season where, this is the gift that's gonna get me through. Let's focus on this one. Let's pour into this one. And then, photography, I might have like started with sports, things of that nature. But eventually, when I got a chance to like, photograph the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, then, I'm in different rooms, I'm hearing different conversations, and that's just planting the seed for something different, right? And then I'm like, oh, I can do this. I stay connected with these people. Now, once the idea is at a point where I could execute on it, then I'm like, okay, cool. Let me have this other gift of mine, pour into this idea and make it grow. So that's been key for me. And I've done that basically like during all of my time in Atlanta. And the reason for leaving was simply that, amidst the pandemic, all the events were basically shut down. And I was like, okay, it's finally time to get back to Canada. We are, running low, low. Let's get back home. And let's just, I guess, start back from um, the beginning when it comes to like building the more traditional route. And yeah, that's what fueled my change back to Canada.
Yeah. No, I mean you seemingly went through a couple of different transitions of that because obviously in 2019 we didn't know what was coming in 2020, and then everybody's at home and there's probably not a lot of opportunities out there to find jobs. So creating something on your own and learning how to put yourself out there in different positions at that stage of your life was probably a skill set that really helped when, we came back out for air. And I think another part that's interesting about the documentary is how your siblings describe you, both as a caregiver, but like the drive and motor that you developed through basketball that you still use. And they call you Tony Business. What is Tony Business? Who is that?
Okay, so context. Um, the Tony comes from actually Tony Parker
Okay.
because that was a nickname that was given to me like back in AAU days when I was super, super young. And that stemmed from Tony Parker basically at the time having a career in basketball and music. So I went with it, ran with it, became Tony from then on, nickname wise, and then just making the moves that um I was making. My family was like, man, Link is Tony business because he's always like thinking about, how to um, make things a business or start something or just having that entrepreneurial mindset. So they're like, man, Tony business, or anytime I would do something that fit those qualities, they'll just call me that. So I was like, all right, I guess that's
Uh,
a part of me.
Tony Business. Okay. You about the business like Tony Parker. Got it. All right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Uh, well, now that you're like involved in a lot of different things, you got your own media company, you're part of a board of a nonprofit, you're director at Find Help. Um, what kind of defines your level of success? Like, how are you, creating success, and what does that mean to you now?
Yeah, so that's a question that I was actually reflecting a lot on earlier this year. But it's an evergreen question. Um, Success in each endeavor, there's things that you can measure. Um, Obviously, in being a director at my current organization, or 9 to 5 is called Find Help. We have goals and all of these things. But for the foundation that I'm on a board of, the Slim Duck Foundation by Chris Boucher, who's a two-time NBA champion, there I saw an opportunity to just help and provide value. So when I look at what success is there, it's, man, I came in and they were like, all right, we want to create this foundation for Chris and we'll do a scholarship. And, you know, that's it. The other things were more so desires than plan. And um, Chris is a former teammate of mine from high school, and I moved to Toronto. He was playing for the Raptors at the time, and I was like, man, if I'm here, I might as well, help and provide value. So what I did there was, establishing credibility for the organization, establishing partnerships, making sure that people know us for the work that we do and are enticed to want to contribute, whether it be volunteers, whether it be donations, things of that nature. And, the recognition and trust was big too. We got a chance to be top 5 finalists for the NBA's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar Award last year. So, when I look at that and when I look at just how Chris's brand has evolved to being a community leader, these are the things that make me proud and feel like there's success in my efforts. Um, and then apart from that, I mean, I judge success by the level of impact. It's like we do all these things, but what is the impact that we've made and for who? So these are things that I always like keep top of mind and making sure that, I can have impact and impact that scale over time.
Oh, that's big. Yeah. Huge perspective shift on just like what the values are important to you. And seems like throughout this conversation, just hearing you talk about, you tapping into things that really resonate and drive within you. having a little sense of knowing who you are throughout all of the different steps, and being able to pause and reflect, even in those moments, seems to have been a crucial part of your journey. Um, and I would say that's something that doesn't easily come for every athlete, to really take yourself out of yourself and see yourself from the mountaintop and looking down on like what am I gaining from this? But just thinking about what you know now, and while you're at the peak of your athletic career in Texas, what advice would you say to yourself, knowing what was coming up? What would you say to yourself to kind of prepare yourself for life in the next 5 to 10 years?
Uh, Probably a lot of things. But if I say the key thing would be do the homework and have confidence in yourself. And, that confidence being rooted in the fact that you did the homework. Now, the homework might be different, right? It's a different assignment per season. At the time, it might have been, study the plays and be ready to defend the other 7 footer at the other team. Now, today, the homework might be, you know, um, who is this government official, what's their policy, so that they can be prepared to step into a room and advocate for the services that we provide at Find Help. Or, I'm also building a sports biotech company now, so it might be making sure that I'm able to translate the science to our sports audiences and stakeholders. So um, once you're once you do the homework, um, basically that should quiet out the doubt. Because a lot of times, like people do the homework, but still are like, I don't know, should I be in this room? Or, what if this happens? Like, just do the homework, walk in confident. You got this. You're gonna be good.
Oh, that's real. You put in the work. You have more confidence when it's game time. It's like, oh, I've already done this. I've been learning about this. I'm ready for the moment. And that door that opens up, it's like, okay, I'm not left flat-footed. I'm ready to jump at that. So that's really great advice. Um, and I know you are also like now, like we met at this conference where it's really about athlete development. You care about the development of athletes. You talk about your journey, about the person who you are, and that self-discovery. Athlete Soul, we're truly about the same thing as far as empowering athletes to find themselves beyond the game. So, what advice would you give to athletes now in today's world, about what they can do to find themselves and find their soul, and really thrive in life and think about things they want to thrive in life outside of just the game?
I would say, um, there's this saying by a person who's impacted me deeply. She's a Fortune 100 CEO. Her name is Tashonda Brown Duckett. I think one of two Black women CEOs right now. And, she has this concept. She's in finance. So she says, treat your life like a diversified portfolio, and over time, you'll outperform. But I've taken this, I've remixed it, because she uses that for work-life balance, right? Saying that it does not exist, but if you treat your life like a diversified portfolio, like everything that you care about, and then you allocate um, in a way that makes sense. So the way that I see this for player development is, you know, instead of the plan A and plan B, like plan A being your sport and then plan B is everything else, I say treat your identity like a diversified portfolio. Um, you're nobody is just one thing, and that's just the facts of life. Like taking it back to the days where I was playing at UT Arlington. I was a basketball player. I was a student. I was a brother. I was a son. I was a photographer. So for any athletes, I think it's important to encourage them to think about themselves in the way that highlights the fullness of their identity. And then, allocate time, resources appropriately for each season or each day. It might be like, hey, um, today I have to be the athlete from like 8 to noon, and then the student from like noon to 5. But in a grand scheme of things, it's just understanding that you're more than one thing. And if you're able to like allocate in a dynamic way, then you never forget about a part of yourself and then come to a point where, oh, all of a sudden this exists and I have to like take care of this. And I'm really passionate about rooting against the plan B, just because the connotation of plan B, it just screams this is secondary. It screams plan A failed. Um, and the way that I want athletes to think about their identity is, hey, everything is plan A. All of who you are is plan A, but you will have to allocate differently, depending on what season or what day it is.
Oh man, that is powerful. That is a great piece of advice. I've written it down. Treat your life like a diversified portfolio. Hopefully, everybody is thinking about it like that. Because yeah, like A and B, sometimes it's a negative connotation of B because like I'm trying to pour into A. I like to tell people like A1, A2, just kind of thinking about like everything's still in that same category. But I love this perspective of having a portfolio because with portfolio you're investing in a certain aspect at one point, then you're investing in another aspect at another point, and it's really still part of the full picture of your growth, so that's amazing. Well, Link, man, I appreciate the time that we had to have a quick conversation about your life and your journey. I want to open up to the live audience here now to maybe ask some questions that they may have. So if you have a question, feel free to come off. There you go. Raise your hand or come off mute. And yeah, go ahead and talk to Link.
Yeah, Link, awesome. I love the hearing about your journey and how you're able to take risks, and mostly love the part that you're just talking about with the diversified portfolio. And you said something at the beginning where a lot of times in sport, there's like a resistance to feeling that way, right? Like you had people telling you that they might not have thought you loved basketball because you were doing photography and stuff like that. So I kind of wanted to just double click on that a little bit and ask maybe like, why do you think sports feel that way, or maybe certain coaches feel that way, and how we can help change some of that narrative to be more closely aligned with like this diversified portfolio thought process?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is a mindset thing, rooted in the stakes of, the high stakes of sports. When people dream of playing at the high level, or when you think about, what's required. Let's say we stick to basketball to become an NBA player. You always hear about the percentage less than 1%, less than 1%. So then, that signifies that you have to put in a lot of effort to be in the top 1%, um, which is true. It requires a lot, but you know, I think it's important to consider the full person because of the effects that we see when we don't do that. And that's the part that, the people who are more closely tied to the basketball side or are just on the outside of the sports world don't
Hmm.
always get to see, right? So we hear about the hard work that's required to reach that level, but do we truly know what um, the percentages are for people who finish their sports and, are struggling with mental health, or are struggling to find opportunities, or are not transitioning well into a career. So I think, positioning the issue as, really taking care of the athlete, um in, like, a 360 view, would be best. And, right now, if it's more business oriented, just sometimes try to tie it into how that makes sense for the sport. And sometimes, like, taking a break from the sport is the best thing that somebody can do. So, just have to find your use case and tie it back um, to, what you're advocating for. But I think it's a long-standing mindset that just needs to be broken down over time with the use of examples. So continue doing the work. It is much needed.
Transition talks. We got Steve doing that work for sure. Thank
Everybody
you.
on the
Appreciate you, Link.
call.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you, Ed.
Go ahead, Mario.
Hey, Link, first of all, man, I think you're a leader. This is just great. Okay. Wonderful stuff. But I'm gonna get into you with from another player from another ball player, right? You're 7 foot 7'1", right? Um, very, very tall guy. And I know the challenge because I'm just 6'6", right? So I'm just curious to know how was that transition? Because I know coming I heard when you said everybody always tell you, and this is true for people who don't know playing ball. Everybody, we all grow up trying to make it to the NBA playing professional basketball, and they don't tell you, and here, they don't tell you once you get there the different challenges that you're gonna face. And seeing you at 7'1", 7 foot 7'1", coming from that background like Matumbo and everybody, and just being around the space of basketball with the Toronto Raptors and being. I'm from Atlanta, so I already know how, and I know everybody at Georgia Tech, so that's why I put that in there. So I know how that went down already. So this is good. So being 7'1", and whoever got in between that when it came into your sports agent and being in that space and that mindset, because I know when you was that means you was in the loop, you was in the circuit, and just understanding that at that being that tall and being right there, and knowing you have that opportunity, and now transitioning that into the space that you're at as a businessman, a leader, someone who very aspire all this different talent. How did you feel about that when you had to make that decision?
Yeah, no, that's a super, super good question. Something I've reflected on a lot. Especially as I was producing my documentary, just thinking of the fact that, not everybody gets to be a 7 footer, and there's so many advantages basketball wise and stuff, but mostly because of my health, right? I've had like 5 knee surgeries, and I was like, man, you know what, I talked to an orthopedic surgeon, and he took a look at my knees, and he's like, yeah, you know what, let's maybe pivot a little bit. And I was like, all right, cool. I got the message. Now it was just, you know, what does that transition look like? And with the pressures of, everybody seeing me, and be like, hey, you're a 7 footer. Why don't you play basketball? Or my family, seeing the basketball avenue there as a way to make money out of college. You can go to Turkey, you could go to China, you can make that much. But for me, I was like, man, I do want to preserve my health. So I'll find a way. Now, what those conversations did was add pressure. But I think, I was talking about how Atlanta was for me. I was definitely not probably not thinking about that too much at the time, but those conversations subconsciously like fueled me because I was like, it the only way for me to make it is not just basketball. And
Yeah.
I'm going to show y'all that. And, that's kind of become like a part of my identity where being more than an athlete, like the saying that LeBron and KD started a few years ago or a bunch of years ago now. Um, but yeah, that's really like the essence of my being, like being more than an athlete and showing people that you could succeed, even as a 7 footer who is not on the court. And I've walked around NBA courts with my camera, and they're just like, "Oh, why are you not up there?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm doing my thing. I'm doing well, and I get opportunities that so many people want." Um, you know, Photography in the NBA, and I'm out
Yeah, I
there
think that's
doing
hot.
it.
That's
So
dope. Yeah.
yeah, so it's fueled me to keep striving for that success and showing like, hey, this is what success look like, no matter what you look like.
And one more question. Who the best in your family? Because there's a lot of tall guys. So who would be the best?
Ah, the
This is being recorded now, so you got to be careful with this.
I know. I'll I'll plead the fifth on this one. I'll say it's me.
All right. I ain't no more. I say no more, man. I appreciate you and I love everything that you're doing. I gotta let some more people get in here. All right.
Thank you to Mario.
There's a question in the chat from Petra. First, she says she loves your courage during your transitions. You were steadfast with humility, but with this humbling journey. But how did you cope mentally and emotionally during those inconsistent, challenging seasons?
Um, I want to say, some of it was positive, some of it was not so much. So the positive parts were like, speaking with family, trying to stay active, like when I was in Atlanta, and then, doing activities related to my passions. The ones that were not so positive, were, being a little more reclusive at times, and just I guess having a perspective that wasn't always just like everything's gonna be all right. And at the time I speak about that in the documentary too, where I lived with one of my former teammates, and because of just everything I was going through, it was hard to communicate how I felt. And the friendship there suffered because of the situation. So these are some of the things that happen when you're in a situation that is tough. You're trying to cope the best you can, but a part of you is just, the human that um, might, go into your own corner and not want to talk to anyone, or these types of things. So what I would suggest now is it takes a lot of courage, but like just opening up to at least one person about like, hey, this is how this situation is making me feel. Like, what would you do in my shoes, or like, what are you thinking I should do as a next step? Um, I think that's important. And the work that I do at my job now at Find Help, we operate like the 211 helpline. So I see a lot of courage on a daily when people call and ask for help. And I'm like, man, that's definitely something that it should be taught a lot more. It's kind of like conflicting values, even sometimes when you think about like athletes and you should be strong and do your thing. But then it's like sometimes you actually being strong means asking for help, right? So just reframing that is key.
Yeah, no, that's a powerful note for us to close on because that's why we do the work that we're doing, to create that safe space so that the athlete can have those open conversations that sometimes are not always available or seemingly available for folks. So Link, man, this has been a really, really great conversation. Thank you for sharing your story, sharing your nuggets, providing the diversified portfolio. Like that's something that everybody should be able to take away from this conversation. But yeah, man, don't be a stranger, man. You're now part of the family. So hopefully you'll be more opportunities for maybe you can come mentor some of the other folks that are part of the program that we're doing. But thanks for your time. Thanks everybody for joining us for this transition talks. We're gonna keep them going. So yeah, this was great. Thanks, Link.
Thanks so much, and thanks to everyone for attending, for the question, and thank you, Steve, for inviting me to be part of this.
Absolutely. Keep it going, man.